In the New York Times, they told you up front, and we quote the dates and the places in Blueprint for Black Power. They stated very clearly, now we got the money. We want to now deal with politics. And they say that we are going to present each mayoral candidate with 3 demands. Did you read it? And what are those 3 demands, they said? We want now to have a terminal market, a cooperative market that belongs to us as Koreans, so that they can control both the what? Wholesale and what? Retail end of the deal. We're not going to even buy from the whites out there in the Bronx terminal market. That's what we want. And we're going to vote for mayors, and we're going to fund their campaign based on whether they can meet this demand. The second demand, we want these mayors to keep out these big vendors like Pathmark and the others, because they compete against our small businesses. And therefore, we want the zoning laws maintained so that they will not be admitted, so that they can compete against us. This is what people do. They gain power and they use power, you understand? And they gain the important base first, you see? Then their third demand was what? We want the mayor to crack down on what? Vendors. And to sweep the vendors off of the sidewalks. Okay? And you're beginning to see the effects of it. In fact, within about 13 days after they made this demand, Dinkins expanded the vendor squad, bringing in new vans and new personnel and so forth, and stated very clearly that it's not such a great problem to remove the vendors because they have no political constituency. So what are we saying? What are we saying here? So now we got the right to vote, and our vendors are being swept off the street. We got the right to vote, and we are hungry and homeless in the street. We got the right to vote, and now we are jobless and underemployed and unemployed. We got the right to vote, and we're sitting in schools with asbestos and lead and poor teaching facilities. So now you got the abstract rights and the civil rights. But in what way has it really given you a right to be a real human being in America? Cruz summarized this in his critique of this assimilationist leadership. No one knows better than the political ruling class that the political, economic, and cultural policies that monitor the internal affairs of American society are not inspired by moral considerations, but are based on the imperatives of power, especially economic power. The conceptual linking of integration with civil rights effectively obscures that by eliminating discrimination in public accommodations, in voting rights and employment opportunities, neither ethnicity nor cultural diversity is therefore divested of any social meaning or function. The cultural pluralism remains operative. What is he saying here? He's saying that, okay, getting voting rights, getting rid of discrimination in public and private places does not remove people's sense of ethnic identity. In other words, they can still vote, or you can gain the vote, but they will still identify themselves what? Ethnically. They will still act what? Ethnically. There was somebody that tried to tell us that once we got the vote and once we integrated schools and so forth, that these people would lose their ethnic sense. But he's telling you that is not true. As a consequence of civil rights legislation, the dominant culture is still left free to thwart or otherwise limit the social range of integration of the minority group. But on the other hand, the elimination of legally enforced exclusion by reasons of race or ethnicity does in fact enhance the minority group's freedom and flexibility to develop the internal resources of its own political, economic, and cultural plurality. But what is the key is this. The Civil Rights Acts of 1964-65 outlawed the use of race as a basis for making decisions affecting individuals, not groups. It was an ill-conceived conclusion on the part of the civil rights leaders to expect that desegregation in the private and public sectors of an institutionalized economy would transform American society into a nation of desegregated hearts and minds. Let me put it this way. There are a lot of us who like to talk about this individualism. You know, people do what they want individually, and we are talking about individual freedom. And I ask you this question. If you believe so much in individuals and that individuals are so different and that individuals have different tastes and that individuals then will do their things in different ways, why is it that 180 million white individuals don't do business with you? Why is it that 8 million, 7 million Asian individuals free to act on their own individual impulses don't do business with you? You would think if they were so individually different, if they had such individually different tastes, they would interact with you and there would be true integration. But somehow these individuals seem to think pretty much alike when it comes to us as people. Every other group of individual peoples somehow seem to think alike in dealing with black folk. So it says then, you can have individual freedoms, but you can still act like an ethnic group and still use your ethnic identity as a basis for power. And therefore, gaining abstract individual rights in no way means that other people will not continue to act as groups and to use their group as a means of dominating other groups and moving other groups forward. But we forgot that lesson. And so now, as a result of the assimilationist leadership, we find ourselves with all of these abstract rights, and yet it is ashes in our mouths. And we have some other group here called neoconservatives, which I cannot discuss tonight. It really doesn't deserve the term leadership group at all, but it's getting great exposure because it is in line with the crypto-racist white conservatives. They are funded by the white conservatives. They are funded by the white foundations. We discuss in Blueprint for Black Power the power of foundations and of think tanks. You see, we have a dim view as black people of intellectuals. And I must tell you, nothing is more practical than an intellectual theory, ladies and gentlemen. Concepts are the most concrete means of power that you can find. Right. And somehow somebody has convinced us that thinking conceptually is a non-African mode of thought. Somebody comes telling us that we are a non-linear people, that we are spiritual and intuitive, and that thinking logically and thinking analytically and thinking conceptually is somehow the property of white folk. God gave you two sides to your doggone brain. And one brain in one side is for intuition, one side is for holistic thinking, one side is for spiritual thinking. Yes, but you got another side. That's that left side that is the side of logic, that is the side that uses symbols, that is the side that uses analysis. God gave you two sides. He gave you a logical side and an intuitive side. Don't let any joker tell you that your only role is to be intuitive and to be people who can only estimate and approximate. How can you look at the great pyramids of Egypt and the great mathematics and then turn around and say that you are only a spiritual and intuitive people? You've got to be crazy. Let me tell you, and this is one of the problems I want to talk about when I talk about nationalists. Be careful that in your effort to separate yourself from white folk, you don't wrap white stereotypes in kente cloth. Okay? And this is happening to a lot of us. The same stereotypes that these people have laid on us. that we can't think straight, we can't think logically, we are emotionally oriented, we are overrun by spiritualism and spiritism, that we like to guess, that we don't know the real and true answer. This is the same game that white's been laying on us. Then we get some guys who want to come in and says, this is naturally African, and now we feel all right about it. Get out of here. We got some people telling us, that we are an oral people, and we are an oral people. But they want to make us think that oral communications is the only means by which we as African people should communicate with one another. You got to be out of your mind in a day and age of electronic communications and computers and so forth to lean on an antiquated methods of oral presentation. It is no way I can deliver here in this oral presentation the kind of information that can be delivered in a book. And therefore you must become a book reading people. You must become a people who can analyze words. You must become a people with a vast vocabulary. You must become a people who can process the highest words and the most difficult words rapidly, because these are the people who are opposing you and who intend to bring your life to an end. Be careful.